Yes, sir. My name is Joshua Houston. I'm General Counsel at Texas Impact, and we are here on House Bill 2535. Texas Impact is a statewide faith-based network that serves kind of as an umbrella for about 25 different faith-based organizations, 17 of which are actual denominational bodies. Historically, Texas Impact has never really worked on CHL issues. We're kind of a new policy territory. And our board has met today to discuss what our position might be. We are neutral on the bill, and each of our board members are sent to us by the different denominations. Each member denomination gets 2 representatives, so they are going back to their denominations to discuss what that particular individual denomination's position might be. But they wanted me to come and share with the committee what they will be telling their denominations on this bill. On the one hand, we really appreciate the permissiveness and the freedom that this legislation creates. Under current law, Representative Kleschmidt, you're right, a church either posts what is known as 30-06 notice, which prohibits all CHL holders from carrying concealed, or a congregation omits to post the notice, thus making it open to anyone with a CHL to carry concealed on the premises. We read this legislation to kind of create a third option. A church could post 30-06 notice, keeping the majority of the world out, but then give written permission to people that they felt were qualified. On the other hand, with that great freedom comes a great responsibility. Under this legislation, congregations would be in the position of picking and choosing who they want to carry and not to carry in their congregation. It's an interesting question from a policy perspective as to whether this is a proper or an improper authority to confer upon a church. And if it is a proper authority to confer upon a church, another interesting question arises for denominations, which would be who is it that they believe would be qualified to carry or not to carry, and what policies should they create regarding those qualifications. And as they go to make these policies, lastly, we think that each denomination would need to think through and consult with attorneys to figure out what legal liabilities they might be creating with regard to those policies. At what point does a contractual relationship exist when you start to put things in writing? When does a volunteer become an employee? That's a great question that we would like to know the answer to as well. There's also a provision in the code, section 1702.037, which currently gives an exemption to nonprofits and civic organizations. It applies only to law enforcement, so they are allowed to serve as volunteers. This bill, of course, would expand that to CHL carriers. Would there be a difference in their training levels that would create additional liabilities? That would be something I would advise them to consult with attorneys with as well. This may be especially tricky for our more hierarchical denominations. Each individual denomination has a different polity. From an internal governance perspective, what is relatively easy for a locally autonomous church can present more of a difficulty for a hierarchical church who has to worry about inoculating the entire denomination from the liability of the actions of a local church. We really appreciate the work of Representative Schaefer and his staff on this legislation, and we look forward to working with everyone, and I thank you, the committee, for your time this afternoon.
Thank you. It's quite an analysis.
That was a good job.
Very, very good job.